Right, so it's November now, and as we start heading into winter, tactics change. I say as we start heading into winter, the thing is, to my mind these days, winter doesn't really start till January. So for me, winter is January, February and March. So sort of October, November, December, I think the seasons have changed a little, and I regard those 3 months as autumn. You know, if you look at the weather we've had just lately, we're just into the first week of November, and it's still warm. You know, it's been 20 degrees every day. I mean, whether you agree with it or not, or whatever the reasons, be it man-made or otherwise, that's a totally separate argument. But what you can't argue with is it's getting warmer. Every year, it's getting warmer and warmer and warmer. We're more inclined to have snow at Easter now than we are at Christmas, which tells its own story. So we're getting towards winter. So what I tend to do now is I start baiting up my winter water. Now, for me, bait is one of the most important things. There's 3 important things. Finding them is very important. Baiting for them is very important. So I love winter fishing, and the main reason I love winter fishing is because the carp are very predictable. It's difficult to find them, but once you have found them, they tend to stay in one place. They feel comfortable, they stay there. And with regular baiting, you can have action throughout the winter, basically. And what I tend to do is I like to bait very lightly but very regularly. So I'll choose my winter water is chosen access, the fact that it's going to be very quiet so I can do what I want, and I can get down there regularly. So I like to go every day, and I'll take about half a kilo of bait with me every day, that's all. Put maybe 30 or 40 baits on each spot, that is it, because I'm not wanting them to fill up, I'm wanting them to just regularly visit that spot. If you keep the bait going in, they'll keep feeding. If you miss a few days, it's absolutely critical. If you miss a few days, it's blown, because they'll just shut up shop, they'll drift off, and they'll just lay torpid for the rest of the winter. But if you keep the bait going in, they will keep visiting. So it's a very, very, very important part of winter fishing. As I said, once you've found them, you keep the regular bait going in, you will catch them on a regular basis. So that's kind of my winter approach. I generally just go with boilie only. I only use small baits anyway. I don't fine down or anything. I just carry on using exactly the same rigs and setup that I've used throughout the year. I struggle a little bit with the idea of fining down. A lot of people say, oh, fine down in the winter, the water's clearer. That's kind of it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. As the water temperature drops, the carp's eyesight deteriorates. If you're fining down for rig mechanics, okay, I get it. But if you're fining down because of visibility and you don't want it, there's no point. You know, the carp's eyesight has faded. I think that's probably why fluoro higher track pop-ups work very well in the winter time, because their eyesight is faded and they can actually pick that out. So to me, fining down is a pointless exercise because their eyesight has failed. They can be a lot slower, so fining down for your rig mechanics, yeah, I understand that, I get that completely, but not because it's clear and the fish can see more, because they can't. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about my winter approach. Right, okay, so we got down here yesterday. Bit of a different day today to what it was yesterday. Drove through floodwater to get here. It was absolutely caning it down till about midday. I had a walk round and I did find some fish in this end of the lake. They were sort of through the middle channels, bubbling. So I thought, right, yeah, it's a good starting point. So put the rods out there for last night. I was getting a few liners, but this morning they're showing, or have been showing, in and around the reeds to the left of me. So what I've done, I've moved the rods round now. So I've got two rods going towards the reeds, one on either side of the reeds, and they'll stay there now. Either I'll get a bite or we'll be going home. They're not going to be moved, those two. The other rod, I'm still happy to move that around. If I see something, then I'll be moving to that. But basically the swim, this is called the new end. It's the newest part of the lake, and it's fairly clayey. It's fairly uniformed. Yeah, out of all of the sections, it's probably got the least amount of features in it. So it's fairly, the whole bottom is fairly sort of just a clay bottom. Obviously the fish were out there through the middle section during yesterday afternoon, which is what made me come in here. So yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see really. They've sort of shown me that they're over in the reeds today, so two rods have gone over there. As I've said, if I see anything else, then I'll act on it, but at this moment in time I'm quite happy with where they are. I've actually put a little bit of bait out, which is something that I wouldn't normally do, but I've actually put a little bit of bait out over the other rod out along that middle section to see, you know, if they're still there. It's difficult to tell today because the wind's picked up. It's blowing a brisk northerly, so there's quite a chop on the water, so it's difficult to see if there is any fizzing going on. So yeah, that's sort of where we stand at the moment. Things could change, but at the moment I'm quite happy with those two rods over by the reeds. I think if there's going to be any action, that's where it's going to come from. So yeah, we'll see what happens tonight. Yeah, so we're back down on the farm pond, my syndicate water that we filmed at earlier this year when the fish started spawning. This approach for this trip, slightly different. I haven't been down here for a little while, hasn't been fished that much, and it's been fishing slowly. So as opposed to my normal sort of approach to winter, this is a little bit different. I haven't been able to trickle the bait in. So basically what I'm doing is fishing for one bite at a time. The tactics that I use for that, I revert back to my old faithful cotton rig. We've done a video on that before, so I don't want to dwell on it too much. It's called a cotton rig because my pal saw it and said it looks like a piece of cotton. What it actually is a KD rig, a Kenny Dorset rig, tied with supple braid. So the hair, two around the hair, then flip the hair back and go four under the hair. And what it does is it gives you a really aggressive, when the bait gets sucked in, if you imagine it's tight, so it goes in tight like that, and the minute that the carp spits it out, it slackens off and it drops. So that is going to drop straight into the bottom of the mouth. It's what I call a pinball rig, so it bounces around inside the mouth and it's going to tag something. But as I said, we've already done a video on this, so we don't want to dwell on this too much. But that's my sort of approach on this trip because I haven't been able to get any bait in. I'll use this, thread a little PVA bag onto it. What I'll do is I'll tie a PVA bag up for you in a minute. We'll drop it in a bucket so you can see what it looks like, and I'll go through the things that I use in that PVA bag. Right, so these are the items that I'm going to be using for my little baggie. Stick mix, cell match pellets, and the little bit of magic, the casters. So the first thing I do, little pinch of casters in, a little bit of powder in, pellet, powder again, and then casters. Make up a little baggie. Now, one tip I will give you for this is don't tie the bag up too tight. What happens when the bag hits the water, it constricts, and if you're not careful, when that blows, it blows the contents everywhere basically. So don't tie it up too tightly. What we're going to be doing, we're going to be threading the rig through this bag, which is why I use a little bit of pellet in the middle. It means I can pass a needle through the bag without piercing any of the casters and melting the bag. So there's a little baggie just tied up. Give that a little snip. So there's your little baggie. If you look around the bag, you can see where the casters are and where the powder and the pellet are. So pick a spot, pass the needle through without piercing any of the casters, and then all you have to do is pull your rig back through it. And there you go. Pull your hook into it. One little baggie and rig ready to go. So we've been sitting here and chatting and reminiscing about winter and why I enjoy winter so much, and it took me back to, I guess it was 3 years ago, and I'd been fishing the water sort of November, December, and I've been doing really well. Caught a few fish, culminated in a 50 pounder. I was planning on carrying on, but then on the lead up to Christmas, it got fairly busy, so it kind of scuppered my plans a little bit. It stopped me because I wasn't able to keep baiting my spots. You know, you can't, it's just not right to do it when other anglers are fishing. So it stopped me dead in my tracks a little bit. I was chatting to one of my pals on the phone, and he said, well, why don't you go and have a look at this other lake? And this lake is like, the winter form is appalling. You know, it never does winter fish. It's crystal clear, it's weedy, and I couldn't tell you the last time it even did a fish in the winter time. But I said, no, okay, I'll go along and I'll have a look. So I've gone up there, got out of the van, walked up, and the first thing that struck me was the colour of the water. It looked like a latte coffee. And I've walked around the back, and what had happened is one of the ditches had burst, and it had all gone into the lake. So this lake that was crystal clear, or always used to be crystal clear, was now like this tepid coffee colour, which it looked dreadful. It looked appalling. And I'm sort of wandering around scratching my head, and I phoned my pal. I said, mate, the colour of this water. He said, yeah. He said, it'll make a difference. I said, no, mate. I said, it's just not. You know, it just doesn't look right. So anyway, okay, fair enough, he says. So I'm stood there, and as I'm stood there, now this lake's got one common in, and it's only ever been caught twice. I think Gary Harrow was the last person to catch it, which was about 2 years prior to this, and it hasn't been caught since either. But while I'm standing there in this one particular swim, this thing shuffled out the water in front of me, right the way up to its wrist of its tail, and just dropped back in, this massive, great big big common, sorry. And when Gary caught it, it was mid-40, it was 45 plus. So I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, you know, there's an opportunity here. So I phoned my pal back, straight away I said, yeah, all right, we'll start on Sunday. This was on the Wednesday. So I've gone back to the van. I had about 3 kilos of bait in the van, so I've got that out, back to the swim, and I put the 3 kilos of boilies around where I'd seen the fish, where I'd seen the common. Went home Friday, come back again on the Friday, put another 2 kilos in on that same spot. Come back on the Sunday to fish with my pal Mark. He come to fish with me as well. Dropped in on that spot. Anyway, long story short, I had 3 fish that Sunday, Monday. 330s as well to boot. So clearly, you know, this is a water that would never normally do a winter bite, never mind 330s in one trip. So I carried on. Every other day I was coming down, and the more bait I put in, the more they ate. You know, I got to a stage, I fished it January and February, so for 8 weeks, and I got to a stage where I was putting 20 kilos a week of just boilies in. And the more I put in, the more they ate. And I ended up with, I think I had something like 30 fish in those 8 weeks, and 14 of them were over 40 pounds, which is just unheard of, really. I mean, I think, obviously, I think the main factor was, well, there's 2 main factors really. One, it was particularly mild winter, but the other factor was the water coloration. You know, it obviously induced them to feed, where that's normally crystal clear water, and weedy, I would imagine. I do find that when I'm picking the winter water, weedy waters are pretty much a no-no. They just don't seem to fish very well in the winter time for whatever reason. I think as the weed dies down, it's still holding a bit of natural food. I think it's quite comfortable for them as well. I think they just sink into the weed and they just stay there. It's always a couple of degrees warmer in the weed, so I think they just stay in that weed. So generally I wouldn't, if it's a weedy water, I wouldn't look at targeting a weedy water in the winter time. But I think where the ditch had burst and it had coloured, because that colour just held in the water, it didn't drop out of that water, out of the water at all. For 8 weeks, it just stayed that tepid sort of coffee colour. And I think that definitely spurred them on to having a feed. And as I was saying earlier, if you could keep the food going in on a regular basis, like every other day, they'll keep eating it. And that's, you know, a real, for January and February, or any time of the year, it's a ridiculous session of fishing. But for January and February, it was just ridiculous. And funnily enough, I did go back there the next year, and the water was crystal clear and it was weedy, and I couldn't buy a bite out of it. So it just goes to show you, sort of, when an opportunity arises, grab it, make the most of it, and enjoy it, because I certainly did. Okay, so you might be wondering who this gentleman is to my right, or more importantly, what's he doing there? This is Simon. Simon's normally that side of the camera. He's the Gardner media man. He comes out, does all the filming, deals with all the media, the Facebook, all the media posts and all the stuff.
Creative side of things.
Way over my head. Oh, you're creative now, are you?
Kind of.
Way over
I
my
like to
head.
think so.
So, why has he sat there? Well, last night, Andy was very kind and allowed Simon to fish. He's come down to film for a couple of days with us. The aim was that I would catch a fish. Well, as you can imagine, it's Simon that's caught a fish. Not only has he caught a fish, he's caught the biggest fish in the pond. It's a common known as the Perfect. It's a 50 pound 10 ounce. It's the lake's first 50 pounder. It's a lake record, and it's also Simon's PB. So,
a bit of an eventful evening.
And that is why Simon's sitting here, and he's now going to tell us all about it.
Oh wow, where do I start? It wasn't kind of the scripts that we planned for the film, was it, first of all?
No,
Although I wouldn't really want to change it.
No, definitely not, mate. No.
Well, we turned up and it was hammering it down, wasn't it? It was absolutely torrential.
I mean, we drove through floodwater to get here, basically, didn't we?
Yeah.
It was really heavy rain.
A little break in the weather, which gave us time to bivvy up and have a little look around.
Yeah.
You spotted some signs, a little bit of fizzing in a few spots.
Yeah.
Actually, we're right next to the spot where I caught the fish. There's a reed bed just to our right, and this is an incredible venue. It really is. It's kind of made up of separate lakes, separate ponds that are joined with narrow channels. And one of the rods, I thought it would be a good spot to place it within one of those channels near a reed bed, but also to put a little line of particle across the channel. So if anything came through, it might intercept that line and move up it. So the reeds are about, I think 10.5 wraps from where I'm fishing, and it closes right in where we are here. It's just a gentle catapult range to get the bait on top. So I fished a D-rig that someone taught me a couple of years ago, which I'm very fond of. Can't remember who it was.
Who taught you that?
I think it might have been your good self. With a Blake's HMV wafter, just off the reed bed, literally 8, 10, 12 mil boilies around it, a little scattering of particle, nice slack line leading out to it, and then 9 o'clock, all hell broke loose. Absolutely thumping down. It was the rain was so heavy you could barely see the water surface. And I actually didn't realise how big the fish was until I got it close to the bank, at which point it decided it was really going to fight, put up a good fight, and it rolled on the surface. And then I kind of thought, wow, this could be one of the big girls.
Yeah.
It took me a little while. Once it was in front of me, it took me a little while to get it in the net, but I sunk the net, and at one point it kindly pretty much darted into it. So it was in there. And then I come and woke you up, and you thought I was pulling your leg.
I did. It's like 9 o'clock, and I've had a bit of the lurgy, so I was kind of I was asleep. Well, I was fast asleep, and
head tilt straight in your face.
Head tilt straight in my face. Simon's standing there, dripping through, saying, I've got it. I said, got what? He said, £50 common in the net. I went, and then I looked at him and I thought, he's soaking. He can't be winding me up. And it took a little while to sink in, but sure enough.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Beautiful, immaculate fish. Yeah. Absolutely immaculate.
The perfect
shape.
Common. Yeah.
Not a scale out of place. So what else is in the lake? I'm not sure what the stock is.
Well, that's one of. I mean, there's 3 very big commons. Unbelievably, that's not the biggest one. Right. Although that's
the first 50.
There is another common in here called the Lost, which has always been bigger than the Perfect. That hasn't been out for a little while, so that could well be £50 as well.
Yeah.
So there's three big commons. There's a lovely long mirror that's probably about 4 foot long, huge long mirror, which is mid 40. Again, could be pushing right up there.
Could be pushing 50.
Yeah, and then there's a couple more that are £40 as well. So,
right.
So
probably 8 fish in that 40 to 50 barrier.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And total head of fish in here?
There's about, I'd have said 60 to 70 fish in here.
Yeah.
All told.
Wow.
So yeah, and there's a good there's some stockies, 20s, 30s, 40s, and now you're £50, mate.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Yeah,
a night to remember, that one.
Oh.
And the light, the light, full moon, just in between the rain, mist across the water.
Yeah, it was so
really quite incredible.
Atmospheric. Yeah, it was. The moon and the steam and the mist lifting off the water was
beautiful. It
was a fantastic
It's quite
night.
A unique place, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's got a proper
there's a vibe to it,
yeah.
which is amazing.
Definitely.
It really is.
And we have to say
beautiful water.
Big thank you to Chris for coming down.
Absolutely. Yeah. Took the snaps for me.
Yeah, Chris come down to help
Check
us
the
out.
weight.
Obviously, it's a big fish. It's a £50 fish. And he popped down, the owner, because he wanted to have a look at it as well. So we had a little crew down here that was between us. We managed to get her back in the water the way she come out, which was perfect, mate.
Yeah.
The perfect common.
And then the rain started again.
It did.
It was like
It
a
did.
window of opportunity.
It was, literally. We had about a half an hour where it stopped,
Yeah.
where we could get everything done, and then, unfortunately, because it was dark and it was raining, we couldn't get any video footage, but we have got some lovely stills.
We've got some
courtesy
stills
of
that we
Chris,
can.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm sure you'll be showing them off for a little while, mate.
They're going to go in the memory bank. Those ones.
Big time, mate.
Great.
Big time. All I can say is congratulations, mate. Well done on
Thanks.
your new PB.
Thanks for inviting me along.
Brilliant,
Cheers,
mate.
Darren.
You're welcome.